Is Spencer Petras the real answer at quarterback for the Iowa Hawkeye football team? Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com sits down with me during part 2 of our podcast this week to answer that question. Also, Iowa State. What a Cyhawk game we have in store this September. And if COVID continues to trend in the right direction here in the States, could that be a similar college game day atmosphere to what we saw a couple of years back in Ames? We'll talk about that game and also the lead up to that game, Iowa versus Indiana in Kinnick Week 1. And CJ Fredrick, he is officially a Kentucky Wildcat now. How does Iowa bounce back from that decision? All that and much more during part 2 of our sit-down with Tom Kakert during Week 162 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is From the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Are you a Hawkeye fan living in Story County? Do you feel isolated, like you're alone in a maze of red? Well, you're not the only one. And that's why we here at StoryCounty.news have launched a brand new section of our website, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, which will feature our weekly podcast, Brada's Branded Thoughts, as well as other Hawkeye-related content for all you Story County residents who bleed black and gold, or if you live in Western Iowa, Eastern Iowa, or somewhere else other than Ames and you're a Hawkeye fan, we'd love your support. All of our content is free, so again, give our Facebook page a follow, give it a like, and give our Twitter page a follow as well, at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. The more likes, the more follows, the more support we get, the more content we can continue to push out, and it's all free. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, hosted by StoryCounty.news, for the best Hawkeye content in the area.
So I do want to touch on one other thing before we move on. I want to kind of finish this thing off with a little bit of basketball. Sure. As far as the defense is concerned, people tend to get sort of caught up in the flashy aspect of things. And I know defensive line is always with as much turnover with Davion Nixon and Chauncey Golston leaving and whatnot, Jack Heflin. People are concerned about defensive line. I just don't get worried with Phil Parker at the helm. The guy just seems to know how to put together a defensive line. And it seems like since Kelvin Bell has been here, especially, you're always going to have 6 to 8 guys that rotate in. So maybe I'm a little bit too confident in the line, but what are your thoughts on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you because I'm kind of just still wondering what's that defensive line going to look like, especially, this spring when you're seeing, God bless Louis Steck. He was healthy, but he was out there. And I don't know that you're going to win in the Big Ten with him, but
yeah,
I wouldn't discount it with Phil. And Phil has a style. He has a scheme. I'll say this: the back 7 is going to be dynamite.
Oh yeah,
for Iowa this year. They're just so good. I've kind of called my shot with Kayvon Merriweather for this year, being the breakout star kind of guy. He just seems like he's just ready to go. And people forget he was more of a basketball player at the high school level than he was a football player. And so he's still kind of a baby as a football player. And but you could see during these 2 spring practices that he was coming on. And there's some things happening there that people are going to be excited about. So
he was the starter. He was the starter week 1 and 2 years ago. And it seems like he's certainly in he's one of the guys that Kirk and his staff are comfortable throwing out there to represent Iowa.
But I feel like the D line, there's reason for concern, but there's also I think they'll get it figured out. Wagner looks like he's ready to go.
Yeah, he's a big dude, man.
And Van Valkenburg is ready to lead that group. Noah Shannon's not. He's like Budgeta. He's like Nate Budgeta.
Yeah,
he's kind of sawed off, but he's got some toughness to him. I think Yahweh Black has got a chance to be really, really good. Logan Jones, knock on wood, hopefully healthy. I think he can help him. Logan Lee, I love Logan Lee. I've known Logan Lee for a long time. So, I'm kind of biased there because he's kind of an area kid and got to know him. And he's he's got some toughness to him. So I think they'll figure some things out. And I think Phil will scheme some things around. Joe Evans will help him on third downs, and I think Deontay Craig's going to help them a little bit this year. So they'll figure some things out, and they'll be ready. Phil's defense, you just know what you're getting. He's going to keep you in the game. He's not going to get blown out.
Yeah. And I wrote this down just from my notes from what I saw yesterday. Riley Moss, I mean, looked tremendous. And of course, Matt Hankins, it's too bad with his injury, but obviously he's not a guy that I'm real concerned about as far as playing this spring. So yeah, I mean, and now I have a question for you. Was Terry Roberts in uniform that you saw?
Terry was not. He was in he and Dane Belton were both in kind of it was almost like a sling thing, but
okay. Right.
Terry took his arm out of that and he was moving around doing some stuff. So,
okay.
But he was not in uniform.
He was a guy that got a lot of attention last year, and deservedly so, just because of his contributions on special teams. And I really expected him to emerge.
Yeah.
And obviously we didn't know Matt Hankins was going to come back, but potentially to emerge as one of the starting corners. And so now Jamari Harris, I know he's sort of maybe thought to be ahead of Roberts. Where do you see depth there?
Yeah, I still think probably Roberts is going to end up being the next guy in there. You know who else got a lot of run the other yesterday was Sebastian Castro was back end a lot. So I liked what I saw from Sebastian, and he's a guy that kind of forgotten about a little bit, just because the safety position is pretty deep. So yeah, I look for him to get out there and help out on special teams more. That's kind of the path. That's the Terry Roberts path. You prove yourself on special teams, and that's generally going to get you path to the field. So hopefully he's able to get on the field this year. Although next year is going to be kind of a change at both those positions, provided, Riley Moss doesn't come back for another year. He could potentially do that, I suppose.
Yeah. So. Were you at all surprised? I was a bit surprised, especially now we see what happens with Jordan Bohannon opting to stay for a sixth year. But, Jack Heflin leaving when he did, to me, he's a type of guy that would have really benefited from an extra year. I would have said the same thing probably about a couple other guys that decided to leave. But he's probably the one that I would have pinpointed the most and said, man, they could have really used him and, a little bit more development. Obviously I know he's an old guy, but are you surprised that Iowa didn't have more guys extras? I mean, Iowa State, here in Ames, all kinds of, this, it's amazing how many guys returned for an extra season here. So are you surprised by that at all at Iowa?
I was a little bit. I thought maybe a few more guys might stay. It just felt like maybe a couple guys. Heflin was one of the guys that I thought, well, boy, that would make sense for him to stay because, but it's like Kirk said, some of these guys are just done with school. They're just kind of done. They don't want to hang out in college anymore, and they want to kind of move on with their life, and they don't want to do this grind anymore, or they want to try and go get paid.
I just never saw Jack. No offense to Jack. I hope I know he's got an opportunity now, but I just never saw him being having any shot at being drafted. And so, that decision was, and honestly, I could have said the same thing about Mekhi Sargent, and maybe his clock just kind of ran out, but I think he would have been used a lot this year. Maybe not. Maybe Tyler Goodson, he kind of saw the writing on the wall from Tyler, but I don't know. I thought it was just a little bit strange, the lack of numbers as far as guys who exercise that extra year. Caleb Chudak.
Austin Schulte was another kid.
Yes.
That, you kind of thought might stick around and play D tackle. I'm still surprised the Mark Kallenberger news. I was still surprised by that.
You think there's some? You think there's some hurt feelings there with what happened with his brother?
Maybe. I wouldn't discount that. Just given what was, what his brother said happened to him in the program.
Yeah,
it might not have been totally comfortable for him. Mark's a good kid. Both Mark and Jack. Fortunate to know those guys a little bit. But yeah, those were those were the guys I would think about too. That Schulte was another one. Heflin.
Barrington Wade wasn't going to play. I mean,
No, yeah, Barrington Wade wasn't going to play. They're going to play two linebackers, and they've adjusted and moved. You got to find a way to get Jack Campbell and Seth Benson out there together, and so they're going to do that. So
Sean Byer, I think, would have probably been another one that I could have seen would have benefited from another year, because I liked what I saw from him last year from an athletic standpoint, but he battled injuries for so much of his career that you're an Iowa tight end, you're going to have a chance at the next level. So you would just think that one more year would have done him well. But
yeah, I think guys are just kind of ready to move on. Some guys just don't want to do school anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I was talking to Ben Valkenburg yesterday about that, and just like, what are you going to do for classes now? You've already got your master's in Russian. What are you going to do? He's like, I got to just take some classes, and I'm just going to take enough just to stay eligible and just kind of keep on keeping on. And that's the same thing with Shudak. He's just doing that, take some classes and keep going. By the way, Shudak looked great. If anybody's worried about him taking over for Keith Duncan.
He's got a bigger leg too. He can kick the long ball. All those guys, Blum and Amaya and those guys, they all kick much higher than Keith did. Yeah.
They've all got big legs.
So kicker, you're comfortable with kicker. Obviously you're comfortable with Torrey Taylor punting the football. I don't think we probably worry too much about long snapping. The Kluver, you got the younger Kluver, and is it Spiewak? Is that the Austin Spiewak?
Austin Spiewak, yeah.
And so I'm sure LeVar has got those guys humming, and I'm just not concerned about D-line with what Phil does. Moss looks great. Hankins will be back. Terry Roberts will be back. Jamari Harris seems to be progressing. You mentioned Sebastian Castro. Jack Kerner was back. Kayvon Merriweather looks good. Belton will be back. You've got Benson and Jack Campbell, Justin Jacobs. I think they'll find some time for him somewhere. So this defense, we haven't we haven't mentioned one bit is the quarterback position. We've talked about every other place but the quarterback position, and it's still it's always going to be the most intriguing position. It's always my lead, in situations like this where I like Petras. I think he's mentally there. I think he understands how the job is done. It's so wild though, the NFL draft this weekend, and Blair Sanderson's talked a little bit about this, but I've talked a little bit about this. I was talking to some people last night about this. I was actually with Chuck Long at his charity auction thing that we were invited over to a small group of people at the charity auction thing. And Chuck had no idea about this, that the Wilson kid from BYU almost came to Iowa. Yeah.
And if not for Petras getting wind of, because a bunch of, people were doing stories on Wilson, and Petras saw those and jumped on and said, I'm just going to go ahead and commit now. And then, Ken O'Keefe went up and evaluated Trey Lance. Went up to Marshall and saw him go 5 of 8 and said, boy, that's not enough to really evaluate you. So we're just kind of not going to offer you a scholarship. So number 2 and number 3 guys in the NFL draft. And I'll say this about Petras. He got better last year.
He did.
The last 2 games were his 2 best games. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. The first 2 were the low points, especially the second half against Northwestern, where he threw the 3 interceptions. That was probably rock bottom. And I think there's a segment of the Iowa fan base that checked out on him at that point, and they're just done with him. And you're not going to ever get those guys back. I just don't think he could win the Heisman Trophy, and I think that people just the thing I've learned in my 18 years of doing this is that most people will never admit they're wrong on the internet, because you're never wrong on the internet.
Right.
You just ignore people who bring that up, that you were wrong about something. That
Well, let's be honest though. I mean, he was not good against Minnesota. All right.
yeah,
He was not very good against Nebraska. He was not very good in the first half against Illinois.
Yeah.
I agree. He played a great second half against Illinois. Played pretty darn well against Wisconsin. I thought Penn State he played okay, and Michigan State is just a shell of itself. And he really didn't do a whole lot in that. I mean, I don't even know. I could look at his stat line.
He only had one game in the entire year where he threw more than one touchdown.
Yeah, he was 15 to 27 for 167 against Michigan State. They put up 49 points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I listen. You were there. I was not. What I saw did not. I don't know who it was. One of the wide receivers might have been Tyrone. Talked about this a couple of weeks ago on a Zoom, that he thought Spencer had really come a long ways this offseason, was hitting his guys on the mark. I did not see that with the highlights of both spring practices at all. Now, this is a Hawkeye podcast, but I'm just telling you, I did not see that at all.
I always point out we're only seeing 2 of the 15, so we don't know what the other ones are like.
Right.
That was my question to Tyrone, was what he saw from him. And he was saying he's putting it on the money, and he admitted that he struggled last year and early in the year, and he did. And frankly, what I saw in those 2 practices were kind of what I saw last year.
Yeah.
There was an early interception. Kayvon picked him off early in that first practice, and there was some shakiness this past Saturday.
The Moss interception was not good.
Yeah. It's just these kind of inexplicable throws that you just you can't. And I think the thing that kind of told me everything I need to know about maybe what's going on with him is when Amir did the front flip into the end zone against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And Spencer said he didn't even see it because he was screaming so loud, and and he was celebrating too much. And that just tells me that kid is just so tightly wound right now.
Right.
And he hasn't relaxed and just kind of taken a deep breath and just played. Mm-hmm. He's overthinking it. He's probably gripping the air out of the ball when he's throwing it.
Yeah.
And just trying to be too perfect. And he's going to have to rely. And you can see that in some of his throws where he's trying too hard. He's trying to fit a square peg through a round hole sometimes. And it's just not going to work. And he's got to relax. I'll say this for Spencer, and I do really like him personally. I think he's probably the best one that they've got.
I agree.
He's got the leadership, the moxie. He's got all those things that he checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. He's very personable, very, very friendly, very good social skills. Yeah.
And his teammates look to him as a leader. They really do. And everybody says he's a good leader, but performance matters. And I think the first 2 games of next season are just paramount. I mean, Indiana's the first game, and that's going to be a big game. Penix should be healthy coming off his ACL tear. He should be back. Mm-hmm. Indiana's going to be really good, and they're going to be wanting to build off of a great season that they had last year and send a message right out of the gate. It's a huge game.
Yep.
Huge game. I think it might be a night game on Big Ten Network to open the season. That's my bold prediction. But probably going to be nationally ranked, at least to start the season. I'm doing the Lindy's Preview magazine. And they just told me today, I'm writing the Iowa piece for them. And they told me over the weekend, they're like, yeah, you got to write a little more because Iowa's going to be in our top 25. So Iowa and Iowa State are going to be in the top 25. Matt Campbell's 0-5. Yeah. Matt Campbell's 0-5 against Iowa.
No, listen,
he is.
Game day will be here.
You live in it.
I know people don't like, certain people think game day is overhyped. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but there is, I cannot imagine what that atmosphere will be here, assuming that COVID continues to, diminish more and more.
I think Iowa has to beat Indiana to get game day.
Yes, I agree. And who does Iowa? I don't have Iowa State's schedule in front of me.
I'm sure it's some cupcake.
I think it's UNI. I believe it's UNI. Yeah. I could be wrong on that, but
I shouldn't say that's a cupcake then, because they've lost to UNI in those spots.
If they lose to UNI this year, that's the hype around Iowa football, especially, and I'm speaking from someone who is around it. The hype around Iowa football, especially with what people have endured with Iowa State, or excuse me, I said Iowa State football, with what people have endured with Iowa State basketball over the course of the last 6 months or whatever it's been. Yeah. They are ready for blood in that game on whatever it is, September 9th, or whatever it is. So, game day, if Iowa wins against Indiana, game day will be there, and that will be Spencer Petras' first true road game of his career, because you want to call these other games last year, I mean, they're not road games.
Nobody there.
There's nobody there. Yeah. So listen, that is about as thrown into the fire as you can get, because people knock Jack Trice Stadium, but when that place is full, I've been to a number of games at Jack Trice. It is a really cool atmosphere, right? And when you've got Iowa State fans as hyped as they are right now, and I would not be shocked to see that. I don't know if I don't remember if that game was announced, but that will be, I would guess it'll be a night game on that Iowa State. So it'll probably be on ESPN or ABC,
or it could end up being the big noon game too on.
Could be. Fox. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you, but I just, and I'm not trying to knock Spencer either. I remember thinking the same thing last year, that, you don't want to apologize for him. You don't want to be an apologist. A lot of people said last year, we got to remember, he missed, and I know Kirk talked about it. He hasn't ever competed at spring practice, right? He got here summer of 2019. He missed his spring ball 2020. And, this is his first spring practice, but people got to remember, he got a bowl prep at the end of 2019. He got a bowl prep at the end of 2020. He got game experience during 2020. He got a weird, but condensed, but it was some form of a fall lead up camp to the season. And now he's got a spring practice now. So, when you say, well, it's his first spring practice, that's true, but isn't that a bit deceiving?
I'll say this.
This is his third year here.
Yeah. I'll say this about him, that I think it's fair to say that it's different when you're the guy versus the guy behind Nate Stanley in terms of a spring or a fall camp or anything like that. It's different. And I think last spring would have helped him. Now, at some point you can't keep saying that though. And I think we're past that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think now it's kind of put up or shut up for Spencer, because he's had spring now. You can't fall back to that position anymore. And I think it's Padilla behind him, and Padilla looked pretty good. The last practice, he's still,
he doesn't have the tangibles that Spencer does he? I mean, he doesn't have the arm that Spencer has.
No, he doesn't have a big arm. He's got a good arm.
He's not real big.
He's smaller. He's got touch. He's got touch. I think he's got that.
Which Spencer does not have.
Yeah, Spencer tends to kind of throw it a million miles an hour.
Yep.
A little heat on it. And that's where I think that the nerves, the anxiousness is part of the issue. And he's just got to figure out how to relax and how to be calm and just put a little touch on the ball. He's got talent. He does. He's a talented kid. He's got arm talent. There's no question about it.
He played at a major high. I mean, I think, and I understand it's totally different. We're talking college football, but he played at a major high school, right? I mean, this is not this is not 8-man football. I mean, he was playing in front of probably decently large crowds, right? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, so I'm just surprised that he would struggle, and especially given the fact that he does come off as a confident kid. Everybody talks about his leadership skills. I'm just surprised that nerves would play this much of a factor on a spring game.
Yeah, just some of his mannerisms during the games and stuff. It lends me to think he's tight.
The clapping.
Where he's just he's a little overly enthusiastic sometimes, and it's just like, boy, this kid's just gotta. I used to always say, you're trying too hard.
Right.
You know, you're just trying too hard, and just relax and have fun, and just play. Just go out and like you're playing in the sandlot, and just throw it around and do those things, and then you'll be okay. And the thing that I think Iowa fans are probably freaked out about is Deuce Hogan. There was an appreciable difference in the number of reps on Saturday.
Yeah.
That Petras got, and then that Padilla got, versus what Deuce got. And then even afterwards, Kirk's comments were,
he's not close, right? I mean, he's not close.
Yeah, Padilla had kind of separated himself from Deuce, and that there's.
So do you see a transfer situation around the corner?
I don't think so. I know that's everybody's worry, is that Deuce will be loose, and
then that will be the next fireable offense for Kirk, right? They ran
Deuce Hogan. Well, I had people last year telling me that Deuce Hogan should start.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't just you. A lot of people felt that way.
I just wondered who told these people that Deuce Hogan was ready to start. I'm just like.
And then when you disagreed, you got ripped, right? I mean,
I did. I got killed. I got killed because I said I'm not married to Spencer Petras, but I'm just like, who told you Deuce Hogan was ready? And I like Deuce.
Yeah.
But I think
he's a charismatic kid.
I think Deuce has got a great arm. I mean, you watch him in warmups, and it's pretty. I mean, it's nice.
Something's not clicking. You people forget. I think it's funny. People talk about. These armchair coaches or whatever play callers, calling for someone like Deuce to play, and they seem to think that they know more than the coaches, or that Kirk doesn't want to win. Why would obviously every coach wants to win, but I don't know if people forget the fact that Kirk and this coaching staff recruited Deuce. They every guy that's on this team was recruited by Iowa. So why would they not play? Why would they have why would they have something against somebody? I mean, it's just a ridiculous narrative.
You can only play one guy. That's the thing. You
right.
can only play one guy at that position. You can't play two of them. Can't play two quarterbacks.
Oh, you can. It just doesn't work out very well typically.
No, not if you're going to play one of them at wide receivers. I mean, you could do like
that didn't work. Well, that didn't work out when Brian tried that, or whoever tried that against Penn State in 2018 with Nate Stanley lining out wide, and then you had what's his face come in. Peyton Manziel comes in and at quarterback and takes the sack on 4th down. You remember that play?
That was not a good.
So that didn't work out very well. Okay, so let's talk a little basketball. I really want to wrap this thing up. I know I'm taking you away from your more important affairs here, Tom. So, but I do want to talk basketball, because even though it's the off season, I don't want to lament over what happened in the NCAA tournament. We could do that. I've done it. But CJ Fredrick, I listened to your thoughts on CJ's departure. I'll just ask you straight up: did Kentucky tamper?
Did they talk directly to him? No, I don't think so. Did they talk to his uncle? 100%. 100%.
Because Joe says 100% no. That's what Joe Fredrick says. 100% no, right?
Or
was it a half truth?
Somebody talked. There may be a way that it didn't directly get to him, where John Calipari did not talk to Joe Fredrick or vice versa or whatever, but it was known. And, you know, the thing that people don't realize is that all of this business with the portal, especially with a lot of these good players, it's done with other people that are, you know, they contact other people and say, hey, by the way, if CJ were to transfer, we'd have a spot for him. You know, they'll contact the AAU coach or somebody that's close to, you know, maybe the Covington Catholic coach where CJ went to. Hey, by the way, if CJ ever wants to, or you know, Joe Fredrick might talk to somebody and say, hey, if CJ went in the portal, would Kentucky be interested? You know, and somebody asked John Calipari then, hey, John, are you, you know, that's why you see so many guys make really quick decisions in the portal, because a lot of the business side of things was already done.
Yeah.
It's just it's none of these guys are, especially the good players, are going in without options where they're just like, yeah, I'm done here. They're done there because they got this place or this place or this place, and they probably got one place that they're already picked out, that's where they're headed. And it's all sort of a smoke and mirrors game that everybody plays. You know, it was funny. I had our Kansas site and our North Carolina site contact me and asked me for CJ's phone number the other day. And I was just like, you guys really going to waste your time and try and get a hold of CJ? He's not, A, he's not going to call you, but B, he's probably going to Kentucky. I mean, you know, if they're betting odds on this.
He made sure to, you know, release that list through John Rothstein.
Oh, yeah.
You know, which I thought was just almost comical. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know.
We know.
Yeah.
We know. We do.
So Dick Vitale, I don't know if you saw this tweet a couple of days after the CJ news, spoke with several coaches that are saying that widespread tampering is going on in recruiting players from the transfer portal.
Shocking. You know what my joke was? You know what my joke was? Have you ever seen Casablanca? It's the police lieutenant who's walking into Rick's.
Yep.
And gambling, I couldn't believe this. And then here are your winnings, sir.
Right.
Oh, thank you very much. You know.
Right.
It's every one of the. That's why we got the portal.
I know.
Because everybody was like freaked out about this, about tampering. College coaches are just their own worst enemy because none of them trust each other.
Yeah.
None of them trust each other. And that's how we end up with the stupid portal. You know, I shouldn't.
So is Dick Vitale just totally naive, or is he just blowing smoke?
Everybody knew that this stuff has been going on for years.
Yeah, that's what I saw. That I just thought, okay.
Dick.
I know.
Dick still defends Rick Pitino. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think, speaking of Pitino, I have mixed feelings about CJ. I mean, CJ wants to do what he wants to do. I obviously think there were some hard feelings.
Here's what I'll say about CJ. I wish he would have been upfront about this from the beginning with Fran.
And or at least 4 days before Fran spoke to the media about CJ's injury status, because obviously
Fran talked to him multiple times.
Yeah,
about these rumors, about the rumors that said everything good. Is everything good? Yeah, coach, I'll be back. I'll be ready to go. And then
that's just not. Yeah, that's not professional.
And I don't blame CJ per se. I mean, he's a college kid. You're going to do dumb things, but I mean.
Well, you know, I thought it was funny, Joe Fredrick saying, well, I spoke with the Iowa staff and told them how the rumors got started. Well, the rumors got started by him, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's documented evidence of it. Help is on the way.
Right. So, you know, and I wonder, I kind of wonder why Fran, you know, what Joe said to Fran that reassured Fran.
I don't even know if Joe did. I don't even know if Joe did. But
well, he claims he did. That's what he claims.
I don't know. All I know is that Sunday, Fran got blindsided. He did not expect to hear that news. And because as late as Friday, when the last time the rumor, and I always said, I never heard the rumor from Iowa people, but I heard it. It was all a Kentucky Cincinnati rumor. It was all from people there that were talking about it. And it never went away. And that always concerned me that it never went, because usually some of those things pop up, and it was from people that kind of know some things. Matt Jones, the guy from Kentucky Sports Radio, saying it, just kind of my interest. I was like, he's not a guy that, I mean, you throw some stuff out there, but he's generally not all that wrong on some things. And if he's saying it, I'm kind of paying attention.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, where there's something going on here. It's just the crazy part is Joe Fredrick is the reason that CJ Fredrick went to Iowa.
Yeah.
He is the absolute reason, because they trusted Fran, and because CJ could have went somewhere and had a guaranteed scholarship, not the promise of potentially a scholarship in a year, but one that he would have known about. And he ended up getting it anyway. And I think everybody knew that was probably going to happen anyway, but still, and
I think the big thing for me too is I am all for a kid doing what's best for him. I mean, you look at like
I'm too. If kid want to go to the portal, go ahead.
I mean, there and a coach can leave at any time for a better job.
The coach, an assistant, any of those guys can leave at the drop of a hat. And
he's got kids that he's recruited 4 or 5 years out that are being sort of abandoned by the guy that preached and hyped up his program. So I'm all for that, but I'm also I do think, I know this is almost, some people view it as a laughable thing that you can't even throw this word into the mix, but I do think there's got to be some loyalty somewhere. And with what Fran gave CJ was an opportunity for a kid who had no interest from Kentucky out of high school. And again, I have nothing against CJ for wanting to go to a blue blood program that is his home area and probably the team that he grew up loving. And I have no issue with that, but I'm with you. The handling of the situation, to me, loyalty is going to be reflected in how you handle a situation like this. And it obviously wasn't handled very well. So,
and there was probably opportunity in March if CJ would have just come to Fran after the season and said, look, I'm going to bounce. I'm out. I need a fresh start. And Fran would have been pissed, but he would have respected that and just said, you know what, that's all right. And they could have probably found somebody easily in the portal. Could have easily found. And in fact, I've heard that maybe there was somebody that inquired, a shooting guard, that may have kind of reached out and said, hey, I'd be interested. And they're like, no, we're good. We got CJ, we got Perk. We're good.
Yeah.
Now I'll say this, Iowa did recover nicely in getting Jordan Bohannon.
Absolutely.
You listen to the podcast, and I've written this too. If you did like the blind resume thing and you just like put, okay, here's a guy who's got 364 threes in his career and he's made 40.4%, every Iowa fan would be doing handsprings outside by the Gable statue.
Yeah.
And genuflecting to Fran for getting somebody that good out of the portal. So that's a great pickup. Now,
and I was a bit skeptical, and I went on the record and said this, that at the end of the season, that I did kind of think it was time for J-Bo to move on.
Sure.
But I changed my. I mean, you can't. Again, his resume speaks for itself, and when you look at the situation with CJ gone, it is sort of a match made in heaven as far as what Iowa's needs were. And it sounds like Bohannon was already thinking about this prior to the Fredrick announcement, although that sort of helped it along. So, it could end up being. I'm not saying it's better because I think CJ had a lot of potential to be maybe the next guy, especially if Joe leaves, which I think he probably will. And so it can be an interesting. I thought one piece of that press conference with J-Bo on whatever day that was, the talk about the rumors around CJ, and he, obviously Jordan's very, very present on social media, and he said that he didn't even hear about the rumors. Do you buy that? I mean, is it possible
No,
for a 20? I mean, come on,
there's
and I
zero
asked him,
chance.
yeah. So I just wondered, that's got to screw with the locker room. It has to. I don't know how it can't if those rumors are out there, unless they just
Yeah.
totally bought into what he was saying. And to me, it didn't sound like Jordan has any grudge against CJ, or at least he didn't portray that to the media. Um, I just wonder what those conversations were like behind closed doors from player to player.
Yeah, I know that right after the season, I know some of his CJ's teammates asked him point blank, "Are you coming back?" And he told them, "Yeah." So, and then that Friday after he told Fran no, he's started to kind of make the rounds that maybe he was being less that he was probably going to leave. So, yeah, it's a weird deal, but I
Yeah.
think Jordan wanted to come back all along. I do. And I think that was going to be a tough thing with CJ back because I think they would have had a tough time kind of negotiating. It's just kind of time. The most interesting thing about next season is going to be I kind of think it's time for Iowa basketball to be handed over to the next group.
Yep, I agree.
This last year was kind of like Luka, J-Bo, those guys. Now especially with CJ gone, and I know Weezy's going to be gone anyway. Weezy's gone.
Is he 100%? 100%.
So
There's no
99.999%.
Okay.
I'll leave a window open,
All right.
but he's played his
Everything
last
you
game
know.
as
Okay.
a Hawkeye. Yeah, and I wish Joe well because Joe's
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe Weezy's good. So
I agree. Jordan
yeah,
is sort of.
I think it's just time for even for Connor to take this. This should be Keegan and Patrick's team,
Right.
and Joe Tucson.
I agree.
And Aaron Eulis and Tony Perkins. Fran's got to find out what he's got with those guys, and because that's kind of the building blocks for this next wave. And he's going to have to, you've got some guys that can help you kind of bridge that gap with Connor and J-Bo and Rabracha. You've got some guys that can bring along Josh Onagale and Riley Mulvey and, Chris Murray is going to get his shot too. So those guys will all come along. But I think it's time to just hand it over to those guys. I really do. I think it's time to let those guys find out what they can do.
And that was my biggest issue with the idea that Jordan would come back prior to the CJ announcement, was that I didn't see a scenario that Jordan comes back where Iowa was able to retain Aaron and Joe T. But again, with CJ departing, it sounds like, and I hope Fran, I assume Fran will. I hope Fran sticks to that plan of, giving Joe T a longer leash and, not just, okay, Joe turns the ball over a couple times, we're going to give the ball to Jordan Bohannon. I hope that we see regular use of Aaron and Joe T for, at the one for 35 to 40 minutes a game. I don't know if Fran, he's obviously comfortable with Jordan with the ball in his hands, but I think Aaron's got a great future. I loved what I saw out of him. I mean, for a guy who got very little playing time, he seemed always ready to play. And Joe T's got to clean things up. He's obviously very mistake prone. He's prone to falling down.
There was a time this past year where I thought for sure he was going to be in the portal the minute the season got over.
Yep. Yeah.
He was a mess. I'll never forget being at the Northwestern game. Up there, it was up at Northwestern, and I think it was in the first half, but I'm not 100% sure. But he came out of the game. He was in for like one trip. And then he was out because he had turned it over, and Fran yanked him, and his body language was terrible. He was went and sat in a chair in the corner, far corner, and it looked like he was almost in tears. And Courtney Eldridge, one of the basketball kind of, I think he's I don't know what his title is, like director of recruiting and kind of like a director of basketball ops kind of position, went over and was just kind of consoling him, trying to get his spirits back up. And I was like, God, that kid he's going to leave. He's done. He's lost the confidence of his coach, and I think he might be done. And to his credit, he played better, kind of got his confidence back, and he's a pretty confident kid. So we'll see if he can take it to take that starting role and run with it.
He's a resilient kid too. I mean, when you see his body language, I mean, you talked about his reaction. I mean, you can tell how much he's invested, but he always was like first to congratulate anybody the very next time out. And I think and you probably have better insight on this than I do. I think his relationship with Pat really helps the cause of him staying.
Oh,
I mean, they seem to be so close. So, last question: do they need to do something differently defensively? I think the window for being able to hire somebody that is more defensive minded has sort of left. I don't know how many more years Sherm has in the business, but I think if Fran was going to do that, he was going to do it after the departure of Andrew Francis. This isn't working. I mean, defensively, right? I mean, this is 4 years of basically the same, and maybe I'm being too harsh on Fran, but this is basically 4 years of the same old.
Fran has kind of reached Dr. Tom.
Yeah.
He's kind of Dr. Tom Davis now, where he's making the NCAA tournament and win a game. 4 out of 5 years, 8 out of 10, kind of, you can count on him being NCAA tournament. He's going to win the first round game and then lose in the second round. And that was Dr. Tom until his last year. After the first two was just, you could count on him. He put a good product out on the floor. It was entertaining. We liked watching Dr. Tom's teams, and they played good basketball. But it was bad defense sometimes. Could always score. It's Dr. Tom all over again. I don't.
So what needs to change here? I mean,
it's odd. It's odd that Iowa promotes the level of experience that they have on the bench because they've, three assistants that have been coaches places and they're experienced and everything. But you got a head coach who's over 60. You got two assistants who are over 60. And you need, I think, and I like Sherm and Kirk a lot. They're great coaches. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder if you need kind of a young, energetic guy out in the trail doing things. I think that's important too. And,
do you hear anything about? You hear anything about Sherm
I don't
Kirk?
think. No, nothing.
So they're locked in.
Yeah, I don't foresee either of those guys leaving. Sherm's still kind of dialed in on the recruiting thing from his Nike days, and he knows everybody who you need to know in that business. And and Kirk's a really good assistant coach, and Billy Taylor. When Andrew left, I was like, oh well, Fran's going to call Billy and see if he can get Billy back. That would be the logical thing, because Billy's like, I think he's Pat's godfather.
Yeah.
So he's like family. He's like family. So he was going to bring him back. So
and Courtney Eldridge could be a guy that ends up becoming heir apparent there.
Going to get elevated. Yeah. If somebody left, Courtney's going to get elevated. There's no. I mean, if Sherm left tomorrow, Courtney's elevated. That's what'll happen.
And I think,
sure.
my big thing, if this coaching staff isn't planning on making any changes as far as defensive personnel, I think, what we saw with the Woody years, the Woody, Utah, Mike Gasol, Clemens years, is
Aaron
if
White.
you have, if you have good defensive players, even if you're not really that great at developing defensively, you're going to be okay. And I think this last crop of players, Jordan Bohannon, certainly Tyler Cook, which always kind of confounded me as to why Tyler Cook wasn't better defensively. Even Nicholas Bear, God love him, but if you're not going to, I look at Wisconsin. Here's a team that's very unathletic. I mean, this is, people talk about, well, I was not athletic enough. Wisconsin's one of the better teams nationally, year in and year out defensively, and they don't have a ton of guys that have jump out of the gym. So to me, if you can, Fran's got to start recruiting better defensive players, and I think he's done that with Tony Perkins. I don't, certainly Keegan and Chris. I don't know much about Chris yet, but it seems like those guys, are focused defensively. I don't know, Josh Agundale. That will be interesting to see if he can physically become what he needs to be and lose enough weight and turn it into a Big Ten body. They can be okay. I mean, they were okay in the early Fran years after the, first couple of years of turnover. They were respectable defensively. So, we'll see. I agree with you though about the mantle needs to be handed over, and that was why I was hesitant about the J-Bo situation. Yeah. But those other guys are going to get a lot of time this year, so it's their time to change the overall feeling of this program defensively.
I mentioned this on the message board. Kenyon brought this up too. Kenyon Murray brought this up. The lineup that that I think would be fascinating next year, because Murray twins came up as shooting guard, small forwards. That's who they were. They're good shooters.
Yeah.
Play them with Patrick, Bracha, and then throw Joe T out there and play zone. And you've got so much length. You got four guys that are 6'8" and above, and you got so much length on the wings. You could play zone and I think be very effective with that kind of length out there.
Who's going to shoot?
Will Fran do that? I don't know.
Who's going to shoot?
I think Chris and Keegan can shoot it for sure. Bracha shot 36% from three last year, so you got that. Patrick's got to get a better shot going.
I agree.
He's got to
have a higher release. His release is just too low at this level, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's one of my solutions, would just get more of those length guys out there and play zone and see what that does. That's the Jim Boeheim methodology there.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. And we haven't seen Chris at this level yet, really, but with what Keegan has shown, if Chris can be any semblance of what Keegan has shown on either end, they're going to be okay. And we saw them survive when Luka Garza had to leave the game for a breather or foul trouble without Jack Nungy. We saw them survive against Ohio State with smaller lineups, and there aren't a ton of teams that can throw in a 6'11", 7-footer. So if they have to go small, if Mulvey's not ready, which I don't think he's probably going to be ready for more than 5-10 minutes a game, and Ogundele gets in foul trouble, I think they're just fine with Bracha at the 5, maybe even Keegan at the 5, and playing small ball here and there. I mean, they're going to need Ogundele or Mulvey at times, but small ball is how basketball has sort of evolved over the last 5 to 10 years.
I think the center position is 25 minutes for Bracha, and then you've got 15 between Mulvey and Joshua.
Yeah.
I think that's probably how you have to do it. And I think that's a fair distribution of minutes. And you could probably move for Bracha to the 4 if you need to, with either of those guys on the floor too, just because he can step out and shoot a little bit. But yeah, they're going to have to hang their hat on defense a lot more, because they just won't have the offensive firepower this year.
And so is there any chance of anybody else, joining. I mean, transfer portal wise, if Joe W is gone, that opens up a scholarship. They're at 14 right now, but Jabo doesn't count towards that total. So is there anybody that you heard of that could still be on Fran's radar?
There were a couple weeks ago, EJ Onyu was a kid that I was talking about a little bit, just because I'd gotten tipped off to him a little bit. 6'11" kid who's at the NAI level, actually, who's declared for the NBA draft. And
everybody's after him, right?
Yeah, the secret's out on this kid. He's 6'11", 240, and can play. And he's an actual NBA prospect at the NAI level. I mean, he won't get drafted this year, but he's, second round pick maybe. He's going to have a chance because he shoots it and blocks shots and can score. But it seems like LSU, Florida State got involved. Indiana's kind of poking around on him, and Minnesota, I know, was poking around. There's the secret's out, and then Gavoni tweeted about him the other day, and that means the secret's really going to get out now. So, because everybody checks out what Jonathan Gavoni does for ESPN, and he was tweeting about him. So, So they're
probably roster's probably set. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the roster's probably set.
All right, Tom. Well, the marathon is complete. You've hung in there for nearly 2 hours. So we will release this into a couple parts, and always enjoy talking Hawkeye sports. So we'll have you back at some point. And like I said, it was good to meet you and good to kind of get acquainted.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long 3 months, but we've got warm weather here in Iowa now, and hopefully things will we've had between the last seasons, the past year, we're not even talking about COVID, but just the off-season issues for football, and then the CJ Fredrick malfunction, and then the Oregon bow out. Hopefully things settle down a bit. So we'll have some quieter times ahead.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
All right. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Brada's Branded Thoughts. We will talk to you soon.